I mean, how small are we talking? The question cut through the hallway like a scalpel, sharp and almost gleeful. The laughter that followed wasn't polite. It was the kind that people let out when they know no one who matters is listening. The kind that's mean for sport. Mark stood in the darkened hallway, hands still damp from the sink. He'd been washing the dishes after bringing out the cake, like he always did. Like a good host. Like a good husband. Plates still had frosting on them. His fingers smelled like vanilla. Her favorite. He wasn't supposed to hear it. He wasn't supposed to be there. They say size doesn't matter, slurred Tanya, the friend who wore her blouse 2 buttons too low and always touched Mark's shoulder just a little too long at BBQs. But come on, girl. You can't tell me you've never, you know. Oh, I know, his wife said. And then she laughed. Hard. Let's just say, if I wanted to be disappointed, I'd ask him to fix the garbage disposal again. They howled. Every single one of them. Mark didn't flinch. Not then. Not outwardly. But inside, somewhere just behind his ribs, something ancient and calm and terrifying cracked. She had always joked too loud. Always drank too much at her own parties. But this? This was performance. He knew what that laugh meant. It wasn't just a drunk cackle. It was punctuation. A signal. She wanted to entertain. She wanted them to hear it. And the worst part? No one defended him. Not even the woman who promised to grow old with him. She doesn't mean that, one of them mumbled, weakly. But his wife, his partner, just doubled down. Oh, don't worry. He's sweet. Reliable. Great with taxes. Just, let's say I fake sleep more than I fake anything else. The room held again. Ice clinked against glasses. Someone put on music. Mark stood still in that hallway for another full minute. Not because he didn't know what to do, but because he already knew. He looked at the wall calendar beside the coat rack. A photo of them from last fall, apple picking in Vermont. She was smiling. He was looking at her. He remembered that day. She'd made fun of his boots. Said he looked like a farmer. But he smiled, carried her thermos, and made her laugh by slipping on a rotten apple. She hadn't smiled like that in months. Maybe longer. He opened the drawer next to the shoe bench. Pulled out his car keys. Grabbed his coat. The dog, old, gray, quiet, lifted his head from the rug, but didn't get up. She doesn't even know I'm leaving, Mark whispered. He rubbed behind the dog's ear. You're smarter than she is. He didn't write a note. He didn't slam the door. He didn't even look back. He stepped outside, the cold night air hitting his lungs like a bucket of water. From inside, the music grew louder. Laughter bounced against the windows. She thought she was the star of the night. She had no idea the story had just changed. The first thing she noticed when she woke up was the silence. Not just the absence of Mark snoring or the usual clink of his coffee mug in the kitchen. No, this was a different kind of silence. Hollow. Suspicious. There were no wet footprints outside the shower. His side of the bed was perfectly made, like no one had slept in it. His toothbrush still dry. She sat up, groggy, rubbing the mascara smear off her cheek with the back of her hand. Her birthday sash still lay crumpled on the floor beside an empty bottle of Prosecco. Her phone buzzed, a group text from Tanya with blurry photos of the night before. In one of them, she was mid-laugh, holding a wine glass like a trophy, eyes wild. She didn't even remember the moment being taken. Still no message from Mark. That was odd. He was dependable like clockwork. Morning kisses, check-ins, good-natured sarcasm over burnt toast, routine things. Comforting things. Things that shouldn't just vanish overnight. She scrolled through her texts. Nothing. Not even a passive-aggressive thumbs up. She checked the front door. Locked. His shoes? Gone. His wallet tray on the credenza? Empty. Maybe he went to the store, she thought. Maybe he went to his brother's. Maybe. She dialed his number. Ring. Ring. Click. A woman's voice. Not rushed. Not unfamiliar, but deliberate. Crisp. A tone that carried weight. Mark can't talk right now. Who's this? It wasn't an assistant. It wasn't a customer service rep. It wasn't a relative. Her throat tightened. I'm his wife. There was a pause on the other end, but not the awkward kind. The calculating kind. Like someone mentally weighing how much rope to give. Then a click. No goodbye. No explanation. No name. She stared at her phone, her reflection in the black screen warping with her pulse. She called again. Straight to voicemail. She texted. Who was that? Where are you? This isn't funny. Mark, answer me. Seriously. Nothing. She checked the Find My Phone app, disabled. Location sharing had been shut off sometime between midnight and 3 a.m. She looked around the house with fresh eyes now. The suit jacket he wore to nice dinners? Gone. The watch she gave him on their anniversary? Not on the dresser. She opened the hallway closet. His leather duffel missing. It hit her then. He hadn't stormed out in a rage. He hadn't slammed the door like in those stupid rom-coms. He planned this. She sat down on the edge of the couch, numb fingers gripping her phone, replaying the voice. The woman had sounded calm, in control, territorial, even. Mark doesn't have women like that in his life. Does he? She scrolled to Tanya's number, almost texted her. Stopped. What would she even say? Hey, remember when we all laughed about my husband's DCK? Now he's missing and another woman is answering his phone. She threw the phone across the couch. It bounced once, landed face down. The clock on the wall ticked like a metronome. She stared at the front door. He had walked through it 100 times. But this time, he didn't leave breadcrumbs. And whoever answered that phone, she wasn't some accident. She was a door slamming shut. By noon, she was spiraling. She called his office twice. Straight to voicemail both times. No auto-reply, no receptionist, no trace. Mark always answered. Even during meetings, he'd shoot back a text, busy. You alive, or just bored? Not today. She tried his brother next. Carl. The one who always sounded like he was halfway into a six-pack, even on Sunday mornings. Hey, Carl, is Mark there? A pause. Then, nope. That's it. Carl sighed. Look, I don't know where he is. If I did, I'd tell you. Maybe. Probably. Depends. Depends on what? On whether you're calling to find him or to fix whatever the hell last night was. 'Cause from what I heard, that wasn't exactly your proudest moment. Click. She stared at the screen. Her own brother-in-law had just hung up on her. It wasn't just that Mark was gone. It was that everyone around him seemed prepared for his absence. No one seemed shocked. No one was asking, where is he? Just her. She paced the kitchen, staring at the vase of limp flowers from her party. The remnants of a joke that had cost her more than a laugh. So she got in the car. Mark's workshop was 20 minutes out, tucked behind a row of industrial buildings, the kind of place that smelled like old wood, sawdust, and oil-stained coffee mugs. It had been his sanctuary, his escape. He used to joke that it was the only place he could breathe without being edited. Now it was empty. The gate was locked. Windows dark. No tools on the walls, no scrap wood on the benches. Just a faint square on the wall where a picture used to hang him and his dad, holding a newly built oak table. Gone. She sat in the driver's seat, engine running, hands gripping the wheel so hard her knuckles whitened. Then she saw it. His car. Not parked outside the shop, but down by the old gas station at the town's edge. The one with a half-lit, open sign and a vending machine that still sold glass bottles of Coke. She pulled in slowly, heart jackhammering. It was his license plate. His bumper sticker. The cracked rear taillight from that fender bender last fall. It was his car. And then she saw him, standing beside it, wearing that navy blue jacket she always said made him look like a professor. He was leaning against the hood, arms folded, laughing, not smiling, laughing at something a woman beside him had said. The woman was maybe mid-50s, sharp pantsuit, silver-streaked hair pulled back tight, the kind of woman who read contracts for fun and drank her bourbon neat. They were standing close, too close. He reached out, touched her elbow gently as she spoke, that familiar gesture he always used when someone had his full attention, the one he used on her before. It knocked the breath from her lungs. He didn't look sad, didn't look angry, didn't look like a man licking his wounds. He looked free. She ducked behind her steering wheel like a coward, heart slamming against her ribs. This wasn't about him running. This wasn't about cooling off. This was replacement. And the worst part wasn't that he had found someone else. The worst part was realizing he hadn't just found her. He had already started building something with her, long before the cake was cut, long before the first bottle of wine was uncorked last night. She'd mocked a man who had already let go. And now? Now she was the one hiding in her car, watching from a distance as he laughed without her. She started the engine. She didn't even know where she was driving. But she knew one thing, that image? Him. With her. That was going to haunt her longer than any voicemail ever could. Exactly 7 days after the party, a small padded envelope arrived at the door. No signature required. No courier smile. Just dropped into the mailbox like it was any other Thursday. Her name wasn't on it. It was addressed to Mark V. Lansing. She stared at it for a moment too long. Something about the clean typeface and precise formatting setting off a quiet alarm in her chest. The return address wasn't familiar. Not a store, not a family member. It was a law firm. Not local. She brought it inside, sat at the dining table, and turned it over in her hands. Still sealed. Still clean. Like Mark himself had signed off on its perfection. She hesitated. A pang of guilt flickered. Was this legal to open? Then another voice in her head spoke louder. He walked out. He's not here. He forfeited that courtesy when he let another woman answer his damn phone. She tore the top off and slid the contents onto the table. No letter. Just a single, thick envelope stamped with a gold-embossed emblem. Broden and Marsh LLP, Estate and Trust Advisory. She opened that too. Slowly. Inside was a document. 3 pages, stapled. Formal. Neat. The first line stopped her cold. This notice is to confirm that Mr. Mark V. Lansing's primary mailing and legal correspondence address has been transferred to the following entity. MB Holdings Trust. P.O. Box 1168. Windermere, Washington, 99208 MV. Mark's initials. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the page. She skimmed further. Words like private entity, asset protection, property transfer, mail redirect floated past her eyes like confetti made of glass. There was nothing hostile in the tone. Nothing angry. Just clinical precision. He'd moved everything. Not just his physical body. Not just his toothbrush and jeans, but his identity. Through a trust. Her Mark. The man who once asked her how to refill a printer cartridge. The guy who needed 3 tries to set up their Netflix password. The man she joked couldn't strategize his way out of a salad bar. Had formed a trust. Had moved legal assets into it. Had hired lawyers. She stared at the address again. Windermere. Not a town she recognized. Not in their county. Not in their life. Her eyes darted to the kitchen calendar, still on last month. Still with the party date circled in pink marker. She flipped it to the next page. Blank. No dinner with the Thompsons. No doctor appointments. No business trips. Mark was off the grid, not in panic. In preparation. A sudden urge hit her. She went to his desk drawer, the one he never locked. Empty. Not just cleared out, but organized. The paper clips were gone. The drawer liner was wiped clean. She yanked open the filing cabinet. Half the folders gone. And the ones left? Pointless. Old receipts. Car registration from 3 years ago. A dentist appointment card from 2021. That's when her breath began to shorten. This wasn't a meltdown. It wasn't him reacting emotionally. It was a strategy. She thought she'd wounded him. Thought her words that night. Those jokes, the smirking cruelty, might have fractured something fragile. She didn't realize she'd just confirmed something he already suspected. That she saw him as small. And now, standing in her quiet kitchen, holding a document with the words, Independent Trustee Approval Required, she realized something worse. He wasn't trying to get away from her. He was building a world where she simply didn't exist. Where she didn't qualify. She pressed her hand against the marble counter to steady herself. The air felt thinner. The house, once shared, now echoed in places it never used to. She'd joked that night about being too much woman for one man. But now, she wasn't even enough to warrant a courtesy call. He hadn't yelled. He hadn't cried. He'd just restructured and rebranded. It was supposed to be a reset. A low-key dinner. Just 6 people. Her safe circle. Friends who had toasted her birthday less than 2 weeks ago, who once clinked glasses at her house and called her hostess of the year. She told herself they'd understand. That things had just gotten out of hand. She planned it carefully. Lit the good candles. Set the table with the blue stoneware plates Mark always hated. Cooked the chicken herself instead of ordering from the bistro down the street. Even opened that bottle of red she'd been saving since Christmas. No drama. Just warmth. Or so she hoped. They arrived late. All of them. Not one person walked in with the usual peals of laughter or jokes about traffic. Tanya brought a bottle of wine but didn't hand it over with her usual wink. It just sat on the counter, unopened. Even the hugs felt staged, barely touching, a half step back immediately after. They sat, talked, but the conversation was flat, too measured. Like everyone had been briefed not to make eye contact with the elephant in the room, or, in this case, the very obvious absence of the man who used to crack jokes from the kitchen and pour wine like he was hosting a cooking show. He's out of town, she offered, unprompted. No one asked. Just a polite nod from Rachel and silence after. Appetizers came and went. Salad too. It was during the main course, over a stiff silence broken only by silverware, that Diane finally spoke. You know, she said, placing her fork down, what you did at your party? Everyone looked up. Diane's voice was calm, measured, but her eyes were glassy. That wasn't funny. Her mouth opened to respond, but the words snagged in her throat. She hadn't prepared for this. It was just a joke, she managed, voice thinner than she intended. I mean, we were drinking. We were all. No, Diane interrupted. You were laughing. The rest of us just didn't know how to stop you without making it worse. Tanya set down her wine glass a little too hard. And Mark? He was in the hallway, Diane added. He heard everything. You knew that, right? The room froze. Even the dog, curled under the table, lifted its head. She tried to smile. It didn't land. I didn't think he'd. I mean, we joke all the time. He knows I don't. You humiliated him, Rachel said quietly, cutting her off. And you didn't even flinch. You just laughed louder. Someone coughed. Someone stood. Chairs scraped tile. Napkins folded. No dessert was touched. Within 10 minutes, they were all gone. No lingering goodbyes. No offers to help with dishes. No, let's do this again soon. She stood in the kitchen, staring at the untouched cherry tart on the counter. The whipped cream she'd made from scratch started to collapse, melting into itself. She opened her phone. No text from any of them. She refreshed her feed. No likes on the dinner photo she posted earlier. Not even a pity emoji. She tapped Tanya's name. The message thread stopped exactly 1 week ago. The last text was a party photo, her arm around Mark, captioned, "You two are disgustingly adorable." Now? Nothing. She clicked on Rachel's contact. A message bubble hovered, typing, then vanished. She didn't hit send. Because what could she possibly say? That it was just a joke? That she didn't mean anything? That the man she'd spent 2 decades with didn't deserve to take one bad night so seriously? Except he hadn't made it about one night. He had made it a referendum. And it seemed everyone else had quietly voted. She slid the tart into the trash, listened to it hit the bottom with a sickening splat. Even the food didn't want to stay. It was taped to the door, half slipping from the edges where condensation had loosened the cheap blue painter's tape. At first, she assumed it was just another maintenance notice, maybe something about the water pressure or garbage bins. But the header was in bold, all caps, and formal. Notice, leaseholder has been updated. Contact new property management for access or inquiries. Her heart gave a slow, confused thump. She peeled it off, reread it, then again. The wording was too vague to make sense, and yet sharp enough to cut something deep. Leaseholder has been updated? Updated to whom? She hadn't signed anything. She hadn't requested a change. She unlocked the door with slightly trembling fingers, walked straight to the kitchen, and dialed the landlord's number from the magnet on the fridge. His name was Tony. She'd always thought he looked like the kind of guy who ate cold cuts standing up in his garage. He answered on the second ring. "Tony, it's Julia, apartment 3B, she said quickly. "What is this notice on my door about the leaseholder changing?" There was a pause on his end. A faint rustling. She pictured him pulling up a file, chewing on a pen. "Oh, yeah," he said. "That was processed last week." "Processed? What the hell does that mean? I live here." "Well, not on paper," Tony replied, voice uncomfortable now. Mark Lansing filed the transfer. New leaseholder is Evie Holdings, through a management proxy. Corporate handoff. Her breath caught. He can't just do that. Actually, he can. His name was the only one on the lease. "No, wait, we both live here. I've lived here for 8 years. We share this apartment." He sighed like a man who'd had this conversation before, maybe not today, but in some other version with some other woman who didn't see the slow wave coming. "Listen, I'm not trying to be rude, okay? but Mark signed the original lease. Utilities are in his name. So is the deposit. He handled all payments. Technically, you were listed as a co-occupant. That's not the same thing as a leaseholder. Her voice dropped into a low, ragged whisper. So what? You're saying I don't live here? I'm saying, Tony said slowly, that legally, this place isn't yours. Click. She dropped the phone on the counter and stared around the kitchen like she was seeing it for the first time. The place was spotless, her doing. The bar stools were the exact ones she picked from a design catalog. The curtains? Custom ordered. The wine rack on the wall? Her idea. None of it mattered. None of it was hers. She opened the hallway closet in a daze. A few of his jackets still hung there quiet, untouched. Like a decoy, she yanked open the bottom drawer. Gone. The documents folder, the one she always stuffed full of receipts and old leases and bills, had vanished. She opened the bedroom closet. That's when it hit her. The slight shift in space. The hangers spaced out a little more than usual. Her shoe rack slightly skewed, like it had been nudged. The top shelf where his winter coats used to sit, empty. She walked into the bathroom. The top drawer where his razor and deodorant lived, now held only her things, carefully rearranged to fill the void. He hadn't left a mess. He'd left a vacancy. Strategic, quiet, unmistakable. She opened the fridge. No more almond milk. No more blueberry yogurt. His protein shakes gone. But the fridge was full, not empty, full of her food. Almost like she'd been curated. She stood in the center of the living room, barefoot, suddenly aware of how much of the apartment wasn't hers. The lease, the utilities, the foundation. She had spent years decorating a place that was only hers in decoration. The illusion of belonging had just been ripped away, clean, surgical. Her safe space? Reassigned. Her home? Rebranded. And the man she mocked like a harmless sidekick was now erasing her like a smudge on a lease agreement. She sat on the couch, his old recliner now gone, leaving a gap in the room, and stared at the space like a stranger. Because that's exactly what she was. She was already on edge when she walked into the office that Monday. The weekend had been a fog of half-slept hours, unanswered texts, and the ever-present hum of dread. Her inbox was stacked with polite check-ins from clients, her calendar marked with meetings she no longer had the emotional bandwidth to fake her way through. Still, she'd shown up. Power suit. Hairpin back. Smile stapled on. By 10:15, she got the email. Subject: please stop by my office at your earliest convenience. E. Carlisle. Eric Carlisle. Her direct supervisor. Middle-aged, genial, spreadsheet-obsessed. The kind of guy who wore Dockers to the Christmas party and brought gluten-free muffins to staff meetings. He'd never summoned her before. She paused outside his door, checked her reflection in the wall-mounted fire extinguisher glass, then knocked. Come in, he said, without looking up. She stepped inside. He motioned to the seat across from him. She sat. Eric folded his hands, glanced at his monitor, then back at her. Julia, your name came up in a background scan. She blinked. What kind of scan? Reputation monitoring. PR fallout detection. It's standard for employees in client-facing roles. His voice was unusually careful. We work with sensitive accounts. Government contracts. Finance. Anything that might show up on social media, we get flagged. She crossed her legs tightly. And what came up? Eric turned his monitor slightly so she could see. It was an article, no byline. A blog post. Posted on some minimalist site with a gray header and no comment section. Anonymous. But surgical. The joke that cost her everything, when the wife of a prominent consultant turned a birthday into a public humiliation. Her eyes scanned the screen faster than her brain could keep up. The quotes were paraphrased, not exact. But the implication was clear. It described a drunken birthday gathering where the hostess turned a private moment into a public display of cruelty toward her spouse, mocking his body, his value, and their intimacy while guests watched and laughed. No names. But details? Oh, the details were enough. The husband, a respected small business owner, had vanished quietly from the event and subsequently transferred all holdings to a legal trust within 72 hours. She felt the blood drain from her face. Eric didn't move, just waited. That's someone's exaggeration, she said, trying to keep her voice from shaking. It's gossip. Trash. Anyone could have written that. He nodded, slowly. But our PR firm cross-referenced timeline data with social posts, he said. And there's overlap. One of our partner's spouses was at the party. Apparently, it's been shared around. Oh God. Her voice sharpened. This has nothing to do with my work. That would be easier to argue, Eric said, gently, if you weren't married to someone who's now registered as a trustee for a mid-cap consulting holding with direct links to 3 of our competitors. She stared at him. That's what? Mark Lansing. MB Holdings. Windmere. It felt like she'd been slapped. Eric leaned forward. We have to open a formal review. HR will contact you this week. Until then, I'd advise against any external communication or social media activity. And I'd strongly recommend a statement of clarification. I didn't do anything illegal, she snapped. He didn't flinch. That's not what this is about. It's about perception, about judgment, about who people trust to handle million-dollar contracts. She wanted to scream, wanted to tell him it was one stupid night, that she was drunk, that she didn't mean any of it, that Mark always took things too personally. But even as the thoughts formed, she saw the truth in his face. This wasn't about Mark anymore. This was about her. The woman who mocked her husband like a party trick. The woman who didn't notice him leave. The woman who laughed too loud and too long. And now? She wasn't just losing him. She was bleeding credibility in front of the one place that still respected her. As she walked out of Eric's office, past the glass-walled conference room and down the hallway, she caught eyes turning away. Conversations dipping in volume. She didn't need to ask. She was the story now. The one nobody was defending. She didn't plan to follow the car. Not consciously. But when she spotted it again, Mark's Volvo, same cracked taillight, same damn pine-scented air freshener swaying from the mirror, it felt like fate had given her one last thread to pull. She trailed it across 2 neighborhoods, past the city limits, down a tree-lined access road that looked more like the entry to a private estate than anything off a GPS grid. She parked a safe distance behind. Watched. He stepped out first. Not hurried. Not hiding. Wearing a pressed blazer, sunglasses, holding a manila folder tucked under one arm like he was headed to a board meeting. And then she stepped out. The woman from the phone. Not young. Not flashy. But polished. Charcoal pencil skirt, fitted white blouse, hair swept up like a corporate weapon. Calm and controlled in the way that screamed competence. Julia waited until Mark disappeared into the glass building up ahead, something sleek and anonymous with no obvious signage, before she got out of her car. Her heels clacked too loud on the pavement. Her mouth dry. She approached with the flailing confidence of someone who hadn't slept but still thought indignation could win a debate. The woman noticed her instantly. Didn't flinch. Just turned, one eyebrow arching slightly. You're Julia, she said. Not a question. And you're what? His rebound. Julia snapped. The woman didn't blink. I'm his accountant. Julia opened her mouth, closed it. The woman continued, evenly. And his attorney. And his longtime consultant. Also, his friend. Her voice was smooth as marble. Controlled. With just a hint of amusement under the surface. Like she'd dealt with women like Julia before. Many, probably. You answered his phone, Julia said. That wasn't professional. I wasn't being professional. I was being clear. There was a pause. Julia tried to hold her ground, but the other woman had the calm of someone invited into the inner circle while she stood fuming outside the gate. Then the woman pulled something from her handbag. A white envelope. No stamp. Just Julia's name in familiar cursive across the front. Mark's handwriting. She held it out. Not aggressively. Just patiently. Julia took it, slowly. I assume he's still too much of a gentleman to say it out loud, the woman said, voice softening a notch. So he wrote it down. Julia opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside, a single sheet of paper. One sentence. You didn't break me. You revealed yourself. That was it. No signature. No rant. Just that. For a second, Julia couldn't breathe. The words were too simple. Too cold. Too true. They held the weight of 100 tiny observations she thought had gone unnoticed over the years, comments made in passing, dismissive laughs, careless jabs dressed as humor. She looked up, eyes burning. This is revenge? No, the woman replied. This is structure. She tucked the envelope back into her bag, turned slightly. Paused. You thought he was soft because he didn't shout. Because he didn't correct you in public. because he didn't measure his manhood in volume or posture. But here's the truth. She met Julia's eyes. Calm. Direct. You mocked the wrong man. And then she walked away. Just like that. No dramatic exit. No lingering gloat. Julia stood alone on the sidewalk, clutching a letter that weighed more than any legal document she'd ever signed. Because in that one line, Mark hadn't just ended the conversation. He had erased the version of him she thought she knew. And all that was left was silence. She ironed the tablecloth twice, lit every candle, set the table the way she used to when she still cared if the forks matched. White plates, real napkins, the bottle of wine he always pretended to hate but quietly finished. The playlist was soft jazz, something neutral, sincere without being dramatic. Because tonight wasn't about performance. Tonight was the apology, the real one. She rehearsed it under her breath as she chopped shallots. I was cruel. I let a moment of ego humiliate a man I never deserved. I thought mocking made me strong. It didn't. It just made me small. The roast was in the oven. Potatoes golden. Salad crisp. Everything perfect, down to the stupid water glasses with the etched rims they got as a wedding gift from someone neither of them liked. She checked the clock, 6:35. By 6:50, she was pacing. At 7:10, she reapplied lipstick. At 7:35, she poured herself a glass of wine. At 7:50, she texted, "Dinner's ready. Please come. I just want to talk." No reply. She tried again. "Please. You don't have to say anything. Just listen. Just let me explain." Still nothing. At 8:14, her phone buzzed. A message from Mark. Just one line. "I have nothing left to say, but you'll understand everything by Monday." No period. No punctuation. Nothing else. She read it 3 times. The words weren't angry. They weren't dismissive. They weren't cruel. They were worse. They were final. She didn't eat. Didn't clean. Just sat at the head of the table, staring at the candles as they burned lower. The wax formed little halos of grief around each base. She texted again. Desperate now. "What's happening Monday?" No answer. The wind outside shifted, rustling the blinds. She moved from the table to the couch, then back to the table. Picked up her phone. Put it down. Googled his new company name. Searched public filings. Looked for anything that might explain the message. Nothing. Except that gnawing sensation. The one that had taken root since the day she heard that woman's voice on his phone. This wasn't spontaneous. It was timed. Calculated. You'll understand everything by Monday. She didn't sleep. At 1:14 a.m., she sat on the floor of the hallway and stared at the scuff marks on the baseboard where his briefcase used to bump against the wall. At 2:09, she opened the fridge and drank wine straight from the bottle. By 3:26, she was scrolling through old texts. Years of them. His little notes. His dry jokes. His gentle nudges when she was spiraling. Things she forgot to appreciate. Messages that once felt unremarkable now read like a slow, aching love letter. One she never bothered to answer. By dawn, the roast had collapsed into itself in the cold oven. The candles were long dead. The apartment smelled like meat, wax, and regret. And Mark? Mark hadn't just skipped dinner. He had chosen not to see her again. Not out of spite, but because there was nothing left to retrieve. And whatever Monday held, she already knew. It wouldn't be forgiveness. It would be the consequence. Monday arrived like judgment. She hadn't slept. Her eyes burned. Her hands shook pouring coffee she didn't drink. The roast still sat on the counter in a foil-wrapped tomb, untouched, the only witness to her failed redemption. By 9 a.m., she was already in the car. Not dressed for work. Dressed for answers. Windermere wasn't far. A 30-minute drive on a straight road that somehow felt like a tunnel. She didn't even fully understand what she was doing. Only that she had to see something. Needed to confirm the nightmare had a shape, a name, a boundary. She pulled up outside the law firm. Only it wasn't just a law firm anymore. She blinked twice. The plaque outside had changed. Polished brass. Brand new. MV Holdings. Legal advisory and consulting. Underneath, in smaller, unflinching letters. Founder, Mark V. Lansing. She stared. The name. His name. Not shared. Not hyphenated. Not buried at the bottom of a board. Founder. Founder. The word punched a hole through her gut. She got out of the car, almost dazed. her heels clicking on the pavement too fast. Her breath fogged in the early chill, hands bare, hair knotted. She looked like a woman who'd been left behind by time, by dignity, by her own choices. Then the doors opened, and he stepped out. Mark, in a tailored charcoal suit. Cuffs clean, watch glinting. Not overdressed, not performative. Just composed. Certain. He didn't carry papers or a briefcase. He didn't need to. Beside him, her. The woman from before. His lawyer. Friend. Ally. She said something low. Mark smirked, just slightly, and nodded. They turned to walk toward a sleek black sedan idling by the curb. And then he saw her. Or maybe he already had. But this time his eyes met hers. Only for a breath. Then he looked past her. No anger. No triumph. Just peace. The kind of peace a man wears after finishing a marathon everyone said he was too weak to run. She took a step forward. Her voice caught. Nothing came out. Not wait. Not please. Not even why. Because she already knew the answer. She had mocked him to feel taller. She had let people laugh at the man who loved her most. And when he stood in that hallway, hearing every word, he didn't shout, didn't slam doors, didn't retaliate. He rebuilt. In silence. In steel. In trust agreements and business filings. In every little place she assumed he was incapable of reaching. He got in the car. She stood frozen. And as the sedan pulled away, his window rolled down just enough. He didn't wave. Didn't speak. But the corner of his mouth lifted. Barely. Enough. Because this was never about revenge. This was never about rage. It was about dignity. And hers? She sold it cheap, for a punchline. He never had to destroy her. He just had to leave. And become undeniable.
I never believed in fate. But if fate had a sense of humor, it was as dark as the whiskey in my glass that night. Started as a joke. Just another dumb idea fueled by too much alcohol and too little common sense. 5 old friends, drunk on nostalgia and bourbon, sitting around my backyard fire pit, reminiscing about college, our dumbest bets, our worst breakups. The kind of night where you feel invincible, like you're still 25, like life didn't already sink its claws into you with mortgages, kids, and marriages that felt more like long-term treaties than love stories. Then Mark, always the reckless one, leaned back in his chair, smirking like he was about to drop some world-class stupidity. "Hey, you ever see those DNA test commercials?" He slurred. "You spit in a tube, they tell you you're part Viking or whatever?" Brian snorted. "Yeah, and then they sell your data to the government." Hard pass. Mark ignored him, waving his phone. "No, but listen. What if we all took one? See if any of us are secretly brothers. Or hell, maybe we're long-lost royalty." It was stupid. It was pointless. And that's exactly why we did it. We ordered them right then and there. 5 drunk idiots, laughing about whether Mike was secretly French or if Brian was actually related to his bald boss. We didn't even tell our wives, because why would we? It was a joke. A month passed. I forgot about it. Until the results came in. That night, we met up at my place again, minus the fire pit, but plus a few 6-packs. I had the envelopes lined up on my kitchen counter, one for each of us. The plan was to read them out loud, roast each other for whatever came up, and move on with our lives. All right, let's do this. I tore mine open first, eyes skimming past the ancestry junk. Mostly British, some German, a sprinkle of Scandinavian, whatever. I glanced at my genetic relatives tab. Nothing surprising, just a couple of 3rd and 4th cousins. Then Brian opened his. Then Mark. Then Mike. Then Ethan. Silence. I looked up from my phone, expecting to see smug grins, dumb jokes. But instead I saw confusion, furrowed brows, nervous laughter that didn't quite land. "That's weird," Brian muttered. "Says I have a close relative I don't recognize." "Yeah, same," Mike said, scrolling through his results. Extremely close. Like, immediate family close." Mark let out a breathy laugh, shaking his head. "Man, hold up. What the hell?" I looked down at my screen again. My heart did this weird, slow-motion stumble in my chest. One name appeared under every single one of our kids' biological relatives tab. One name that none of us recognized. It wasn't any of us. It wasn't a grandfather, an uncle, a distant cousin. It was one man. A single genetic match linking 5 children. A stranger. My skin went cold. My stomach flipped like I was falling off the edge of something I couldn't see. This has to be a mistake, right? Ethan's voice was barely above a whisper. He was gripping his phone like it might shatter in his hands. I swallowed hard. My mind was already running every possible explanation, but none of them made sense. This wasn't a random cousin mix-up. This was immediate. It was biological. It was undeniable. Mike was the first to say it out loud. If this is right, none of our kids are ours. The words landed like a gunshot. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The air felt thick, suffocating, charged with something primal and ugly. I felt my pulse in my throat. My hands were shaking. Wait, hold on, Brian said suddenly, his voice edged with panic. Maybe we're reading this wrong. Maybe it's some kind of weird statistical glitch. Ethan cut him off. There's no glitch. This is DNA, Brian. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Mark, who had been dead silent for the last 2 minutes, suddenly grabbed his phone and started tapping furiously. Screw this, he muttered. I'm getting the extended report. I want to know who this guy is. Nobody stopped him. Nobody argued. We just stood there, watching, waiting, praying to whatever cruel God was listening that this was all just some colossal screw-up. A few long, excruciating minutes later, Mark's screen refreshed. His face went blank. I don't think I'll ever forget the way his eyes flicked up, wide and hollow, looking at each of us in turn, before he said the one name that shattered everything we thought we knew. And just like that, the joke was over. Silence stretched between us like a noose, tightening with every second that passed. The name Mark had just uttered hung in the air. An impossible, ridiculous, horrifying truth we weren't ready to swallow. Mike shook his head first. No, there's no way. But Mark didn't say anything. He just turned his phone toward us. The name was there, clear as day. Dr. Matthew Carter. A name we all knew. I felt like the walls were closing in. My stomach churned. The pediatrician? I rasped. The family doctor, Mark corrected, his voice hollow. The guy who saw all our wives through their pregnancies. The guy who delivered our kids. The words sent a sickening jolt through me. I turned to Brian, waiting for him to laugh, to call it a mistake. But his face was pale, his breathing uneven. Mike ran a hand down his face. All right, let's think. There has to be an explanation. Maybe he's in the database because he treated our kids, and there's some kind of... That's not how DNA works, Ethan snapped. He was pacing, his jaw clenched so tight it looked like it might crack. This isn't some administrative error. His DNA is in all our kids. Do you get what that means? Nobody wanted to say it, but we were all thinking it. It meant our wives had either knowingly or unknowingly carried his children. Mark took a slow breath, his grip on his phone white-knuckled. This has to be some kind of sick, elaborate scam, right? I mean, come on. The same guy for all of us? What are the damn odds? Maybe not so impossible, Brian muttered, rubbing his temples like he was trying to wake up from a bad dream. Think about it. Who had access? Who was there every step of the way? That doesn't mean... Ethan stopped pacing. It does. And you know it. It was an ugly realization, one that came in waves. We started grasping for details. Memories that once seemed insignificant now forming a pattern too disturbing to ignore. Mike was the first to dig something up. I remember my wife mentioning something about an experimental fertility supplement. Said Dr. Carter recommended it to help with conception chances. She didn't think much of it at the time, said it was just vitamins. Ethan's face went slack. Same. My wife said something similar. She was worried we might struggle to conceive, and he reassured her, told her not to worry. That modern medicine had options. A chill ran through me. My wife had some kind of routine monitoring in her second trimester. Carter said it was to ensure a healthy pregnancy. But now I'm wondering what the hell he was really checking for. Mark swallowed hard. This guy, he had access to them in their most vulnerable state. What if? He trailed off, unable to finish the thought. Nobody wanted to say the words. What if it wasn't just an affair? What if this wasn't consensual? The idea made my skin crawl. Brian let out a strangled laugh, shaking his head. No, I don't buy it. There's gotta be another explanation. Maybe he's just a close genetic match, like a distant cousin. Mike cut him off. It says biological father, Brian. Brian's hands clenched into fists. His eyes were wild, desperate, looking for a way out of this nightmare. Then the tests are wrong. They have to be wrong. Maybe someone hacked the results. Or maybe it's a damn prank. Ethan slammed his fist down on the counter, rattling the beer bottles. Stop. His voice was sharp, final. You know this isn't a prank. Brian opened his mouth, then closed it. He was shaking. None of us wanted to believe it. Because if it was true, if our wives really carried this man's children, then our lives were built on a foundation of lies. Mike exhaled slowly. All right, we don't panic. Not yet. We need to be sure. How? I asked. Mark met my eyes, his expression hardening. We dig deeper. We weren't ready to accept it. Not yet. The whole thing felt too impossible, too absurd. It had to be a mistake, or a coincidence, or something. So we did what any sane men would do when their entire reality was on the verge of collapse. We went looking for proof. Mike was the first to take action, digging through his wife's old medical files. He had a locked cabinet in his home office where he kept every important document, insurance policies, birth certificates, medical records. I watched his face as he flipped through them, his fingers moving faster and faster, eyes scanning pages like a man searching for a way out of a burning building. Then he stopped. No way, he whispered. He turned the page around, showing us a medical form from 8 years ago. A handwritten note in the margins read, routine fertility enhancement. Monitored supplement intake per Dr. Carter's recommendation. Ethan sucked in a breath. Same phrase my wife used. We all started digging after that. Pulling up old emails, checking old appointment records, anything we could find. Brian called his wife, keeping it casual, asking if she remembered anything unusual from her pregnancy. His voice was steady, but I could hear the strain behind it. She hesitated. Well, there was that one time. You remember when Dr. Carter had me come in for that special screening? He said it was part of some new early detection thing for healthier pregnancies. Brian's fingers tightened around his phone. What screening? There was a pause. Then the nervous laugh. Oh, babe, it was so long ago. I barely remember. But yeah, it was kind of weird now that I think about it. He said it was cutting-edge research or something. To help women conceive naturally instead of expensive fertility treatments. I saw Brian's face change. The denial cracked just a little. But that wasn't the worst part. Because as we dug deeper, we found more. Mike, who had access to a patient portal through his wife's insurance, started cross-referencing appointment records. What started as a joke turned into a horrifying pattern. It wasn't just us. The name Dr. Carter kept popping up in connection with other families we knew. Neighbors, acquaintances, even one of Mike's coworkers, who had once joked about how his son looked nothing like him. So Mike called him. Hey, do me a favor, he said, keeping his tone light. You ever do one of those DNA test kits? The guy laughed. Nah, why? Mike's grip on his phone tightened. Just a weird curiosity thing. You ever notice anything strange about your son? Anything that doesn't add up? A pause. Then quieter. Well, my wife always said she had a miracle pregnancy, after we struggled for years, and Carter really helped us. She said we should be grateful. Mike's face went pale. We hung up. None of us said anything for a long time, because this wasn't just 5 families. This wasn't just us. Dr. Carter had been playing God for years. We needed confirmation. Cold, irrefutable proof. The DNA test results were damning, the medical records were incriminating, but there was still that sliver of doubt. An impossible, desperate hope that maybe, somehow, this wasn't real. So we set up a meeting. It had to be casual, unplanned, something that wouldn't raise suspicion. Mark and I knew Carter played golf at the country club every Sunday morning. We weren't members, but Mike's boss was, and for the right price, he was more than happy to let us use his guest passes. We arrived early, dressed the part, trying to act like we belonged. The plan was simple. Shake his hand, get a drink with him, subtly collect a DNA sample, a napkin, a glass, anything we could use to run an independent test. But as soon as I saw him, my stomach twisted into knots. Dr. Matthew Carter. He looked exactly the same as I remembered. Tall, lean, with that perfectly groomed silver-streaked hair and the confident smile of a man who had never faced consequences a day in his life. He wasn't just some faceless doctor anymore. He was him, the man whose DNA was in my son, in all our kids. He was laughing with a group of men near the clubhouse bar, drink in hand, posture relaxed, like he didn't have a care in the world. Mark's jaw tightened. That smug son of a bitch. Stick to the plan, I muttered. Mike took a deep breath, then plastered on a grin and made his way over. Dr. Carter, he called out. Long time no see. Carter turned, confused at first, then his face lit up with recognition. Mike? Wow, look at you. How's the family? Mike didn't even flinch. Great, great. Actually, funny thing, we were just talking about you the other day. We all owe you a round for all those years of taking care of our wives. The words had a weight to them, just heavy enough that Carter's eyes flickered. Barely a second, but I caught it. Then he smiled. That's what I do. Healthy families, happy lives. That's what really matters, right? Mike laughed, but there was no humor in it. Right? Speaking of which, what are you drinking? Let me get the next round. Carter chuckled. You don't have to do that. No, no, I insist. Mike signaled the bartender and ordered another round, his hand deliberately brushing Carter's glass as he slid it over. We had the sample. That was all we needed. We could have walked away, but Ethan didn't. He stepped forward, too close, too direct, his smile tight, his voice just a little too sharp. You've got a hell of a track record. Document seems like your influence on our families runs deeper than we ever realized. For the first time, Carter hesitated. It was barely perceptible, but I saw it. The tiniest hitch in his breath, the slight narrowing of his eyes. Then, just as quickly, he recovered. He set his glass down and looked at us, really looked at us. And then he smirked. Not nervous, not guilty, just amused. Well, he said smoothly, picking up his drink. It's always nice to know my work is appreciated. And just like that, I knew. He wasn't scared. Because he knew we couldn't touch him. We left that country club with a new kind of anger. The kind that doesn't burn hot, but slow, cold, and calculating. Carter wasn't just some oblivious doctor caught in a scandal. He knew. He had known for years. And worse, he didn't care. We weren't dealing with a guilty man. We were dealing with a man who thought he was untouchable. So we did what any sane men would do in our position. We hunted. Step 1. Surveillance. Ethan had a friend, some ex-military guy who owed him a favor. Within 24 hours, we had Carter's entire schedule mapped out. Every morning, he left his mansion in a gated community at 7:15 a.m. sharp. Drove his black Tesla to his private clinic. Worked until noon. Long lunch at the same overpriced restaurant. Back to the clinic. Done by 5. Golf or tennis after work 3 days a week. Sundays at the club. Thursdays he had business meetings at a high-end hotel downtown. He lived like a king. And then there was her. We weren't the only ones Carter had fooled. His wife, Emily, had been married to him for over 20 years. 2 grown kids, both in college. To the outside world, they were the perfect power couple. Carter, the brilliant, charming doctor, and Emily, the elegant, charity-running socialite. But the more we dug, the more cracks we found. Emily wasn't just another trophy wife. She was old money, and her family had funded a big chunk of Carter's early career. His entire empire was built on her wealth, her name. Without her, he was just another overpaid doctor. And that's when we realized his Achilles heel wasn't just his reputation. It was his marriage. Step 2, the weak spot. Mike was the one who found it. A few well-placed questions at the country club, some casual small talk with the right people, and suddenly we had our first real weapon. Dr. Carter wasn't just a liar. He was a serial cheater. Not just hotel meetings. Not just affairs. He had a pattern. Younger women. Nurses. Assistants. Patients. And Emily? She had no idea. The moment Mike told us, I could practically feel the shift in the air. We weren't just a bunch of angry husbands anymore. We were architects, and we were about to design the perfect collapse. Step 3, the first strike. Exposing the DNA scandal? That would be too simple, too quick, too easy for him to recover from. No, Carter needed to watch everything he built crumble. slowly, piece by piece, while knowing exactly who was behind it. And that started with his wife. So we made contact. Ethan sent the first message. A simple, anonymous email to Emily Carter's private account. Your husband isn't who you think he is. Attached were photos. His car parked outside the hotel. A grainy but clear image of him in the lobby. His arm around a much younger woman. A time-stamped receipt from the hotel bar. No accusations. No threats. Just the truth served ice cold. And now we waited. We expected a reaction. A crack in the facade. Some sign that Carter had felt the first tremors of the earthquake we'd set in motion. But the man was a damn statue. The next time we saw him, he was smiling. It was at the country club again, just a few days after we sent the email to his wife. We were sitting at the outdoor bar watching him from a distance. No signs of stress. No frantic phone calls. No sudden changes in routine. If Emily had seen the email, it hadn't reached him yet. Or worse, he didn't care. Then he spotted us. And he walked over. Carter slid onto the stool next to Ethan, ordering his usual whiskey neat, like we were just another group of guys enjoying a drink. The audacity of it almost made me laugh. Ah, my old patience, he said, tilting his glass toward us. You've been watching me lately. Feels like I should start charging you for consultations. Mike's knuckles turned white around his beer bottle. I forced a smile. We just find you fascinating. Carter smirked, took a sip of his whiskey. Yeah, I get that a lot. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice just enough to sound conspiratorial. So tell me, what exactly do you think you know? Ethan's entire body tensed. This bastard wasn't worried. He wasn't scrambling for a cover story, wasn't even pretending to be oblivious. He was toying with us. Mike exhaled slowly. You really want to do this? Carter just chuckled. Do what? Gentlemen, I don't know what wild theories you've cooked up, but let's be honest here. He swirled his glass, watching the liquid move like he was bored. Even if you had something, even if you thought you could take me down, what exactly do you plan to do? That's when Mark lost it. His chair scraped back violently as he stood, hands clenched into fists. You think this is a game? His voice was low, shaking with barely contained rage. Carter didn't even flinch. Instead, he laughed. Not nervous laughter. Not forced. Genuine. Mark. He shook his head, smiling like a parent amused by a child's tantrum. That temper of yours, it's going to get you in trouble someday. Mike grabbed Mark's wrist before he could move. Not here, he muttered under his breath. Not like this. Carter smirked again and downed the rest of his drink. Smart friend you've got there, he said, setting the empty glass on the bar. Then he stood up, stretched like he didn't have a single worry in the world. Well, this has been fun, but I've got places to be. You gentlemen enjoy the rest of your evening. He walked away, completely at ease. And that's when I knew. He wasn't just rich. He wasn't just arrogant. He truly believed he was untouchable, which meant taking him down wouldn't just be about exposing the truth. It had to be worse. It had to hurt. 2 days later, the first warning shot landed. Ethan got home from work to find a thick, cream-colored envelope waiting for him. No return address, no markings, just his name, printed in clean, professional font. Inside, a cease and desist letter from one of the top law firms in the city. It was short and to the point. Mr. Ethan Wallace, it has come to our attention that you and several individuals have engaged in defamatory behavior against our client, Dr. Matthew Carter. This includes but is not limited to false allegations, harassment, and unauthorized surveillance. Should this behavior continue, we will be forced to pursue legal action, including claims of defamation, harassment, and invasion of privacy. We strongly recommend that you cease any and all activities related to Dr. Carter immediately. No signature, no direct contact from Carter himself. Just a cold, calculated warning. Ethan wasn't the only one who got one. By the end of the night, all 5 of us had matching letters. Mike was the first to speak, his voice tight with controlled fury. He was expecting this. I clenched my jaw. Of course he was. He's been doing this for years. You think we're the first ones to put things together? Brian let out a breath, shaking his head. Then why hasn't anyone taken him down before? Why hasn't this blown up? Ethan scoffed, waving his letter. This is why. The moment someone gets too close, he throws money at lawyers to make it all disappear. Mike slammed his fist on the table. No, we are not letting this F*****cur get away with it. But reality was sinking in fast. Carter had the money, the connections, the legal power to make our lives hell before we ever had a chance to fight back. If we went at him like this, throwing accusations, acting out of rage, he'd bury us before we could land a single hit. And that's when it clicked. We're playing this wrong, I muttered, staring at the letter. Mark frowned. What do you mean? I exhaled. We're playing by his rules. We're reacting. Every move we've made, he's already accounted for. He was waiting for us to try something reckless. This whole legal stunt, it's meant to make us panic, force us into a defensive position. Mike leaned forward. So what do? I looked at each of them in turn. We stop acting like pissed-off husbands. I tossed the letter onto the table. And we start acting like men who are about to ruin someone's life. We weren't going to fight Carter head-on. We were going to dismantle him from the inside out. If Carter wanted to play chess, we were done being pawns. We spent the next week planning. Not just a simple takedown, no, that would be too easy. Carter had spent years covering his tracks, building defenses, ensuring that if anyone ever came for him, they'd be left grasping at air. So we had to be smarter, meaner. We had to go after the things he couldn't protect. His money, his reputation, his legacy. Step 1, the financial trap. Ethan had a friend in real estate, one of those guys who knew all the backdoor deals, the legal loopholes, the kind of money laundering schemes that rich men like Carter used to keep their hands clean. Turns out, Carter wasn't just a doctor. He was an investor. And not just in clinics, he had a stake in private fertility labs, biotech startups, and, most interestingly, a little-known medical fund that specialized in reproductive research. A fund that, on paper, was completely legitimate. But in practice, it had fraud written all over it. The more we dug, the more it became obvious. Carter had been funneling money into this fund for years. Some of it likely clean, some of it less so. So we set a trap. Through Ethan's contact, we arranged for a fake investment opportunity, an exclusive expansion project that promised lucrative partnerships with international fertility clinics. It was the kind of high-stakes, low-risk deal that men like Carter couldn't resist. We fed the bait through all the right channels, whispered about it in the same circles he moved in, made sure the paperwork looked just real enough to be undeniable. And then we waited. It took less than a week for Carter's name to show up on a preliminary interest form. Hook, line, sinker. Step 2, the reputation kill shot. The financial trap was just the beginning. We needed to humiliate him. So we went for the one thing even money couldn't fix: public exposure. Mike's wife had a cousin, Sarah, who just so happened to be a journalist. Not some small-time blogger, but a legit investigative reporter who had a nose for medical scandals. We fed her everything: anonymous emails, documents, old medical records showing suspicious patterns in Carter's clinic. A growing list of families whose children's DNA didn't match their father's. We painted the picture for her, step by step, leading her exactly where we wanted. And when she started digging, she found even more. There were other doctors involved. A whole network of shady fertility practices, unauthorized procedures, misfiled medical records. It wasn't just Carter. It was bigger. And Sarah? She knew she had something huge. We watched from the shadows as she built the story, reached out to victims, gathered evidence. She was meticulous, patient, ruthless. The kind of journalist who wouldn't release a word until she had a bulletproof case. And once she did, there wouldn't be a single hole for Carter to hide in. Step 3, the final blow. We needed a cherry on top. Something that would make sure Carter didn't just lose his career, he lost everything. So we went back to Emily, Carter's wife. We had already cracked the surface, planted the seed of doubt. But now we handed her everything. A second anonymous email. This time, not just proof of his infidelities. Not just proof of his fraudulent investments. But the full story. How he had lied, manipulated, used his own patients as test subjects. How his entire career was built on deception. It was the kind of truth no marriage could survive. No empire could survive. And then, we sat back. and watched it burn. It was all coming together. The trap was set, the pieces were moving, and Carter, smug, untouchable Carter, was walking right into it. Until he reminded us exactly why men like him stay on top. Until he hit back. Hard. It started with Mark. He had just gotten home from work when he noticed something was off. His wife, Jessica, was pale, gripping her phone like it had burned her hand. Their son, Tyler, was on the couch, oblivious, watching cartoons. "Jess." Mark frowned. "What's wrong?" She turned the phone around. An email. No subject line. Just a single sentence. "Tell your husband to stop digging, or you'll regret it." Attached was a photo of Tyler. Not some old picture pulled from social media. No, this was fresh. A shot of Tyler in their driveway taken that morning. Mark went cold. He stepped outside, scanning the street, looking for anything. Anyone. Out of place. Nothing. No cars he didn't recognize. No figures lurking in the shadows. Just the usual quiet suburban street. And that scared him more than anything. He called us immediately. His voice was shaking. "This isn't just AF *** King game anymore. We met at my house that night. No bar, no public places. Just the five of us, sitting in my living room, the tension thick enough to choke on." Mark was pacing, fists clenched, barely keeping himself together. "This is different," he snapped. "They're watching us. Watching our families." Ethan was leaning forward, elbows on his knees. "Yeah, because we're getting close." Mark turned on him. "Easy for you to say. They didn't send you a goddamn picture of your kid." Silence. Mike exhaled slowly. "So what do we do? Pull out?" The words hung in the air. We had options. We could drop everything. Walk away. Let Carter get away with it. Let him keep his fortune, his reputation, his smug F *** King smile. But if we backed off now, he wouldn't just win. He'd make sure we never forgot who was in charge. And if he got away with it, how many more families would he ruin? I looked at Mark. "If you want out, you're out. No one would blame you." He hesitated, then clenched his jaw. "No. F *** K that. I'm not letting him get away with this." Ethan nodded. "Then we go all in." I glanced at the clock. Sarah's article was set to go live in less than 48 hours. The financial sting operation was already in motion. Carter was about to step on a landmine he wouldn't see coming. But if he was already watching us this closely, it meant we had less time than we thought. We had to move now. Carter had spent years building his fortress. His wealth, his reputation, his carefully curated image of a brilliant doctor and devoted family man. We burned it all down in less than 48 hours. Sarah's article went live at exactly 8 a.m. By 8:30, it had over 10,000 shares. By noon, it was everywhere. Renowned fertility doctor tied to genetic scandal, hundreds of families affected. The article was brutal. It laid out everything: his shady medical trials, the anonymous DNA results, the misfiled medical records that suggested years of manipulation. There were interviews from former patients, testimonials from women who suddenly weren't so sure how they had conceived. And the real kicker? Sarah didn't just suggest wrongdoing. She had proof. Because while we were setting up Carter's financial trap, Sarah had been digging even deeper. Turns out Carter had done this before. Years ago. Different city. Different clinic. And that case, it had disappeared. Settled out of court. Buried under legal agreements and hush money. But not anymore. Now it was public. Now the whole world knew. At the same time the article dropped, Ethan's trap snapped shut. Carter had poured a lot of money into that fake investment opportunity. He was expecting an easy win, a quick profit. Instead, he walked straight into a fraud investigation. The investment firm he thought he was dealing with didn't exist. But the fake paper trail? That was real enough for authorities to take notice. By midday, his accounts were frozen. His assets were being reviewed. The SEC was involved. Carter wasn't just a doctor with a scandal anymore. He was a criminal under investigation. We didn't have to go after his family. Emily did that for us. By the afternoon, she had packed her things and left their mansion. Not quietly either. She issued a public statement. "I am horrified by the revelations regarding my husband. I was deceived like so many others. and I will be taking immediate legal action to protect myself and my family. Translation. She was about to bleed him dry. And then, as if fate had a sense of poetic timing, at 6 p.m., Carter made the worst mistake of his life. He tried to deny everything. He called a press conference, standing in front of his clinic, surrounded by cameras. "This is nothing more than a coordinated attack on my reputation," he said, voice steady, mask still intact. "The so-called evidence is circumstantial at best. I have dedicated my life to helping families, and I will not be destroyed by baseless accusations." But then, someone in the crowd shouted, "Dr. Carter, why did your own wife leave you today?" The cameras snapped toward him. His jaw clenched. He wasn't in control anymore. And that's when it happened. Someone threw a folder onto the podium. Right in front of him, a DNA report. His name, his DNA, tied to dozens of children. He stared at it. He blinked. He swallowed. The cameras caught everything. The moment the mask cracked. The moment the world saw him for what he really was. The press conference ended in chaos. And Carter? He walked away. For the first time in his life, he had no words. It was over. By the next morning, Carter's entire life had unraveled. His clinic was shut down. His medical license was under review. Lawsuits were piling up from patients, from investors, from women who now questioned every part of their pregnancies. Emily had gone nuclear, freezing their joint accounts, filing for divorce, demanding full control of their remaining assets. And the media? They weren't letting this go. He wasn't just disgraced. He was finished. And yet, the real punishment, the one that mattered, wasn't coming from the courts, the journalists, or the angry mob outside his mansion. It was waiting for him inside his study. Carter sat alone in the dimly lit room, his once pristine desk buried under legal notices, DNA test results, and half-empty whiskey glasses. He looked like a man who had aged a decade overnight. The arrogance, the confidence, it was gone. His hands were shaking as he reached for the single white envelope that had been slipped under his door. No return address, no markings, just his name. Inside, there was only one piece of paper. No threats, no accusations, just a single line, typed in bold black ink. "You destroyed 5 families. We only destroyed one, yours." He read it once, then twice, then a third time. His breath came shallow. His fingers clenched the paper. Because in that moment he understood. This wasn't just revenge. This was justice. And there was nothing he could do to stop it.
She said it like she was announcing a lunch special. "I slept with Gary, your best friend." But relax, it meant nothing. I watched the fire flicker in the reflection of her wine glass. She didn't even blink. Didn't even look at me, just scrolled her phone like she was checking the weather forecast after casually detonating a landmine. I remember thinking, that's a strange choice of words. Relax. As if betrayal was something you could soothe with a warm towel and a Xanax. I didn't throw the glass. Didn't yell. Didn't even ask why. Instead, I stood up, walked into the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water like my throat had suddenly dried from the sheer absurdity of it all. My hand didn't tremble. I didn't blink faster. I didn't pace. I didn't do any of the things I thought a man would do after hearing something like that. Instead, I let the silence do the heavy lifting. Upstairs, the light in our bedroom still glowed under the doorframe, and I could hear her voice through the floorboards, already on another call, laughing. She just confessed to detonating a 30-year friendship and an 18-year marriage, and now she was laughing. That was the moment I realized something fundamental. This wasn't her first betrayal. This was just the first one she bothered to mention. Because when someone shrugs like that, they're not revealing, they're bragging. Testing you. Seeing if your spine's made of rubber or rebar. And she just found out I wasn't going to bend. I went into the guest room, shut the door, and sat on the edge of the bed we'd only ever used when her mother visited. The sheet still smelled like mothballs and lilac. I stared at the lamp for a long time, then opened the drawer in the nightstand. There it was, the old leather-bound notebook I used to sketch furniture designs in. I hadn't touched it in years, not since I retired. The first page had a faded pencil drawing of a rocking chair, dated 2009. The last page was blank. I picked up the pencil and wrote 5 words. She thinks I won't leave. I stared at them for maybe 10 minutes. Then I crossed out won't. Replaced it with doesn't know I already did. Because that was the truth, wasn't it? The moment she said Gary's name, something inside me didn't break. It evacuated. She thought she was dropping a grenade. She didn't realize I'd already built the bunker. I took the notebook, quietly walked into our master bedroom, and watched her for a few seconds. She was in bed, eyes on her phone, still chuckling. Feet wrapped under the same blanket we used on our last road trip. Her wine glass, half full, rested on the nightstand beside a photo of us taken in Sedona. We were smiling. Her hand was on my chest. I looked like a man who thought he was safe. She didn't even glance up. Just said, "Don't be dramatic, Alan. You're acting weird." I smiled. "You're right. I'm just tired." Then I opened the closet, grabbed the safe key from the jacket I kept stitched into my blazer's inner pocket, and walked back downstairs. The small gunmetal box under our bed creaked when I pulled it out, like it knew it was being summoned for something final. Inside, old receipts, tax forms, insurance documents, and a backup drive I hadn't touched in years. I placed everything on the dining table in perfect order, just like I did when assembling test blueprints for jet turbines. Then I sat, not to cry, not to grieve, to calculate. The printer hummed softly in the background like a distant war drum. Jenna's laughter upstairs was louder, sharper. She was pouring another glass, on the phone with someone I didn't recognize by voice anymore. It was the same laugh she used when we first met, reckless and honeyed. Except now it didn't sound like mine. It sounded repurposed. I ignored it. Instead, I focused on laying out the documents like a surgeon preparing for a delicate procedure. The backup drive clicked quietly as it loaded. 4 years ago, when my firm was cleaning out its archives, I took the habit home. Duplicating data, archiving every version, timestamping revisions. Jenna used to roll her eyes, called it your Cold War paranoia. I guess Cold War tactics come in handy when you're dealing with espionage under your own roof. I clicked open the drive. Folders named 2019_corp_travel, Jenna_statements, G_TXDS_archive, Nest_chem_snaps, audio_miscellaneous. Some of it made my stomach turn because I'd seen the patterns years ago. Her card being used at the same bar on nights she claimed to be at Megan's. Gary tagging vague group dinners on Instagram where she was always just outside frame. One clip from the doorbell cam. Her saying, "No one ever checks the side gate, don't worry." That was from 2 summers ago. I remember because that same night she came home with a sprained wrist and said she slipped getting out of Megan's pool. She'd never even been to Megan's pool. I opened a blank document and stared at it for a while. Then, with an eerie calm, I typed the title. Declaration of Marital Fraud. It sounded dramatic. Legal. Final. Just how I needed it to sound. I included everything. Date of her admission. History of questionable financial transfers. One oddly specific Venmo caption. For last night under the stars crescent moon. Sent to Gary. Relevant snippets from synced messages via iCloud. She never changed her login from the time I set up her phone years ago. Photographic timestamps of her car parked outside Gary's firm during nights she claimed to be with her book club. Her signature on our prenup, with the infidelity clause highlighted in neon yellow. Screenshots of the group chat where she joked, "Imagine sleeping with your husband's best friend and still getting to keep the house." Manifesting nail polish. I signed it with my full legal name, timestamped it, scanned it twice, and saved it as PDF and DOCX. By 11:47 p.m., the drive was loaded. At 11:55, the envelope was sealed. It was thick, heavier than it should have been. Not in grams, but in gravity. The kind of envelope that made hands shake when they held it. I wrote her name on the front. Just that. No message. No threat. No goodbye. Jenna. I placed it gently on the center of the kitchen island, right next to the fruit bowl with the slowly rotting oranges she'd meant to juice for the past 3 weeks. They'd gone soft, collapsed inward, just like her loyalty. She came down sometime after midnight to refill her glass. I watched from the shadows by the patio, completely still. She didn't see the envelope, but I did, and I knew that when she did open it, it wouldn't just be paper. It would be a scalpel, one she handed me herself. She laughed like nothing in the world was wrong. Upstairs, through the thin plaster walls of a house I built from my own retirement bonus, her voice echoed, light, flirtatious, too loud for someone with a sleeping husband. Except I wasn't sleeping. I was watching the clock strike 1:36 a.m. from the driver's seat of my truck, parked 2 blocks down. Engine off. No headlights. Just waiting. Listening to the tick of the analog watch she gave me for our 10th anniversary, the only gift she ever got right. I waited 30 more minutes, just to be sure. I'd seen her routine too many times to risk it. She didn't check the kitchen after midnight. Didn't lock the doors. She was too confident. She thought the world would hold itself together just because she never imagined it falling apart. By 2:12 a.m., I was on the interstate. The envelope sat beside me like a co-pilot. I didn't bring clothes. Didn't bring toiletries. Just the envelope, my ID, a few folders, and an address I hadn't typed or spoken aloud in a decade. I didn't need GPS. My hands remembered the route. The road itself felt familiar, like a scar. 7 a.m. found me sitting in a wicker chair in the sunroom of a house tucked behind trees and bad decisions. The lawyer, Charlie Madsen, came in wearing pajama pants and a college sweatshirt. Same coffee mug as always. Sue me. You look like hell, he muttered. You still owe me one, I said, setting the envelope down on the table like I was dropping a loaded weapon. He sat, took a long sip, and picked it up. Opened it carefully like it might explode. When he got to the drive, in the printed documents, he stopped. Jesus, Alan, this isn't a divorce. This is an execution. She left the knife on the table, I said flatly. I just picked it up. He leafed through the declaration. Photos. Message logs. Her own voice on a recording, laughing about how Gary's better with his hands than Alan ever was. Her words. Her voice. Her arrogance, immortalized in MP3. Charlie blinked hard. You want this done clean? I want it done surgical. He stood and walked into his office without another word. I heard drawers open. Paper shuffle. A faint click of a safe being opened. When he returned, he had a yellow notepad and a document with the header, Petition for Dissolution of Marriage with Cause. I'll prep everything, he said. Emergency protective filing, asset lock, full injunction against property transfer. Want to blindside her or give her notice? I looked out the sunroom window, watching the leaves sway under soft morning wind. She gave me none, I said. Return the favor. He nodded. And Gary. I met his eyes. She'll go to him. He'll slam the door. His wife's getting a package today, too. The lawyer smiled grimly. Cold. She made me cold. For a long moment, we didn't speak. Just the scratching of pen on legal pad. Just the whisper of a printer kicking to life behind his office door. Just the sound of an old friend helping dismantle the life I thought I had. Outside, the first sun broke over the hills. Inside, we began the paperwork that would unravel Jenna's world, one notarized line at a time. Charlie didn't say much as he pulled the drive from the envelope, inserted it into his laptop, and opened the folders with that clinical detachment only lawyers and morticians seem to master. But I could tell. The occasional tightening of his jaw, the single eyebrow lift, the slow drag of his coffee mug across the table. Each movement whispered what he didn't need to say aloud. Damn. The screen lit up with a grid of files. Neat, color-coded, time-stamped with obsessive precision. If I had to destroy a woman, I'd do it like an engineer. Start with the messages, I muttered. He clicked on the folder, Jenna__TXDS. Inside, .pdf exports of chat logs, 1 per month, going back almost 2 years. Wait, how'd you get this? He asked. Old iCloud login. She never changed it after I set it up in 2015. Still synced to the iPad she never used again after TikTok came along. I wiped the location data and screen grabbed everything. Dates, times, emojis, nothing missing. He scrolled. One message caught his eye. Gary. I swear, if Alan ever finds out. Jenna. He won't. He's too busy sanding dead trees and pretending we're still in love. Another. Jenna. Let's do your place again Friday. Tell Tina it's a team dinner. LOL. Gary. You're evil. Jenna. You love it. Charlie closed the folder with a soft breath and opened the next. location underscore tags. For late-night pings from her phone, each within 15 feet of Gary's condo, cross-referenced with timestamps from their shared calendar where she'd marked herself at book club. The last entry had a note, "Bring wine," and wear the necklace he hates. Then came the voice memo. She recorded it, drunk, probably meant to delete it. Instead, it landed in her iCloud vault. Charlie hit play. I love that it was his best friend. The thrill of it. It's almost like Alan deserves it for being so damn boring. I mean, he builds tables and thinks that's romance. Jesus. He didn't finish playing it. Just stopped the recording and sat back. "You know," he said quietly, "most guys bring me blurry screenshots and some vague suspicion. You brought me a goddamn black box flight recorder. I was trained to diagnose catastrophic failure before the plane hits the mountain," I said. "Marriage isn't that different." He opened the last file, our prenup, signed 18 years ago at her insistence, back when she was a dental hygienist with student loans and I was a fresh retiree from Lockheed with a pension big enough to make gold diggers blush. She'd wanted to protect herself. I agreed, on one condition, fidelity clause. She signed it after half a glass of rose and a speech about how she'd never betray someone who made her feel safe. Clause 14C. Any proven act of marital infidelity shall void spousal entitlement to retirement funds, alimony, or post-separation support. It was signed, notarized, filed. "I assume you're not warning her," Charlie said. I still on the clause. "Nope. You realize she'll lose the house. No contest. She lost me first." He leaned back, exhaled slowly, then clicked save all and backed up the files twice. Once to his own encrypted drive, once to a cloud folder under my name. "Alan," he said, "this isn't just cold. It's nuclear." I nodded. "And just like any nuclear event, she won't hear the explosion until the lights already passed." My phone buzzed once, then again, and again, in quick succession. I didn't look at it right away. There's a strange serenity that comes with silence by choice. Choosing not to hear the storm because you already boarded the windows and moved inland. But eventually, curiosity outpaced indifference. 9:06 a.m. 3 messages, stacked like a panicked crescendo. "What is this? Alan, I didn't mean to hurt you like that. This is overkill, please call me. We can fix this." I let the screen dim without responding. No rage. No heartbreak. Just a quiet confirmation that the knife had landed exactly where I'd aimed it. Clean through the ribcage of her arrogance. 5 missed calls came next. The last one left a voicemail, 30 seconds of stammering and trying to sound confused, as if the woman who once laughed about cheating with my best friend was now shocked I had the gall to care. I didn't listen to the end of it. Instead, I passed the phone to the clerk at the notary's office. She slid the dissolution packet back across the desk, her eyes wide. This is comprehensive," she said. 12 pages. That's all it took to dismantle nearly 2 decades of what we used to call a life. The front page was plain, petition for divorce, with costs. The attached exhibits made it anything but. I initialed each section without hesitation. The clause confirming spousal infidelity. The emergency freeze on joint accounts. The waiver of right to contest asset division. Charlie sat to my left, calm as ever, flipping pages as I signed. Behind his glasses, I could see him scanning Jenna's texts again on his laptop. Just to make sure. Just to double kill the doubt. "She's going to go nuclear," he muttered. "She already did," I replied. "I just gave the fire a name." He handed me a black pen, the kind with the heavy barrel and the perfect glide, and pointed to the last line. "Final signature, petitioner." I signed it. That was it. 18 years gone in a signature and a quiet breath. The clerk gathered the pages, added her stamp, and began processing the filing for the court. Estimated approval time, 14 business days. But the effect? Immediate. She'd know it before lunch. And sure enough, while Charlie and I waited for our copies to be notarized, her name lit up my phone again. 10 calls in under an hour. She wasn't texting anymore. She was spiraling. I could imagine it vividly. Her in the kitchen, still in her robe, mascara smudged from no sleep, staring at the envelope on the island and realizing it wasn't an argument, it was an obituary. At 10:18 a.m., another message came. "We can work through this. Please. I love you." That was when I realized she still didn't get it. She thought she'd broken my heart. But she never understood. What she broke was the contract. Love? That was gone the moment she made a joke about Gary being better with his hands. What I felt now wasn't grief. It was focus. Like a man assembling a final blueprint before demolition. Because you can't mourn something you've already begun to erase. By noon, her panic had gone feral. She stopped calling me. That well had dried up. She knew silence was now my language. So she moved on to plan B, Gary. Of course it was Gary. The man who grunted through golf stories and offered her cheap Chardonnay and hotel rooms he paid for with a company card he thought no one watched. Gary, who once toasted me at our wedding and said, "If you hurt her, I'll bury you." The irony? Poetic. Her first call to him went straight to voicemail. No ring. Just that dull robotic voice telling her the mailbox was full. She tried again. And again. By the fourth attempt, she wasn't leaving messages anymore. She was screaming into the void. I didn't have to see it to know exactly how it went. At 1:34 p.m., she drove to his house. He lived out in Greenwood Acres, the kind of place where wives wore tennis skirts they never sweated in and husbands kept lawnmowers they paid someone else to use. She didn't knock gently. His wife answered. Dana. 5 feet 9 inches, Pilates instructor, sharp as piano wire. I always liked Dana. She never tried to impress, and she saw through the way Jenna would size her up at cookouts. Jenna stood on the doorstep, breathless, eyes wild, words coming out in shattered syllables, something about talking to Gary. None of it was supposed to happen like this. I just need to explain. But Dana didn't blink, didn't ask questions. She just said, cool and clear. I already saw the email. That stopped Jenna cold. Because that email wasn't just a heads up. It was a precision strike. I sent it at 6 a.m. to Dana's work account, the one Gary thought I didn't know. It contained a polite note and a zipped folder labeled, "For your eyes only." Inside, screenshots of Jenna and Gary's chat logs. The hotel invoice charged to Gary's corporate card. One voice memo from Jenna. Honestly, he's better than Alan ever was. I wish I could just swap them like socks. And just in case she thought I faked it, the last attachment was a photo, Gary's hand, ring and all, resting on Jenna's thigh under a restaurant table, taken by a discreet camera in a nearby flower pot. A little gift from my former aerospace buddy who now worked in private security. Dana didn't raise her voice. She simply stepped aside and pointed at the sidewalk. You should leave, she said, before the neighbors start watching. Jenna stood frozen for a second, the way someone does when their last illusion has just popped like a balloon in a quiet church. No, she said, barely audible. He loves me. Dana didn't argue. She just went inside and closed the door. Quietly. No screaming. No slamming. That silence? Louder than any argument Jenna had ever won. Gary never called her back. Never texted. Never explained. He went dark like a submarine under threat, deep and unreachable. Later, I'd hear from a mutual acquaintance that he was sleeping in his brother's garage, trying to keep his job and salvage whatever public dignity he had left. Meanwhile, Jenna drove away from that cul-de-sac like a woman being chased by a ghost she finally saw too clearly in daylight. Only now it had my face. The cabin sat at the edge of Lake Holt, framed by pines and fog like it had been pulled from an old postcard that nobody mailed. I built it 15 years ago, when the city noise got too loud and I realized the best way to hear yourself think is to put 20 miles between you and everyone who pretends they know you. That's where she went next. 2 days after Dana closed the door in her face and Gary's number turned permanently cold, Jenna did what narcissists always do. She hunted for the one place she thought I couldn't disappear from, the place she never cared to visit until now. She pulled into the gravel drive fast. The tires on her leased Audi skidded like they were offended by dirt. She wore sunglasses the size of dinner plates and a hoodie 2 sizes too big, like that could shrink her into something less visible, less exposed. But you can't hide from a truth that's already clothed in legal ink. She expected me. Expected the Alan she remembered, the one who would sigh, maybe fold, definitely talk. The man who carved her name into a cedar bench one summer and believed silence meant forgiveness. Instead, she got Marty. Marty's 70, wears denim year-round, and talks like every word is a bet you'd lose. He's the caretaker, part-time fisherman, full-time bullshit detector. He's seen bears, floods, and fire, and he ranks angry women as somewhere between raccoons and raccoons with mascara. He was sweeping the porch when Jenna marched up, arms crossed, voice already sharp. "Where is he?" she barked. Marty didn't flinch. "If you mean Alan, he ain't here." She took off her glasses like that would help her reclaim authority. "I know he's here. His truck's gone, but the gate was open." "Gates don't mean what they used to," Marty muttered, leaning the broom against the railing. She stepped closer. "I'm his wife." He squinted like she'd told him she was a Martian. "Not for long, ma'am." That made her blink. "I need to talk to him." "You don't understand. We're going through something." He nodded like he cared, then pulled a piece of paper from his shirt pocket. It was weathered, but still legible. He handed it to her. Typed. Dated. "My signature at the bottom. If anyone comes asking, especially Jenna, tell them I'm away. Indefinitely. No emotion. No address. No return." She read it 3 times, like the words would rearrange into something kinder. "Did he tell you where he went?" she asked, her voice cracking for the first time. "Nope." "Did he say when he's coming back?" "Nope." She looked like she wanted to scream, but all she managed was a strangled, "This is insane." Marty picked up the broom again. "So was Maureen your best friend's mistress? But hey, life's full of curveballs." She froze. "I made a mistake," she whispered, as if Marty was the confessional booth of her crumbling dignity. He gave her a long look. Then, in the slowest drawl this side of Mississippi, said, "Lot of folks realized they stepped in it, right after they tracked it across someone else's floor." She stood there for a moment longer, eyes darting toward the tree lean like she thought I'd step out, arms folded, ready to forgive. But I wasn't in the woods. I wasn't behind the cabin. I wasn't watching. Because by then, I was 3 states away, standing on a pier, sipping black coffee with a woman who'd never heard of Jenna, Gary, or the price of betrayal. And Jenna? She drove off without looking back, because the cabin had finally answered her question. No, he's not coming home. The last domino doesn't fall with drama. It falls with indifference. 2 days after her visit to the cabin, Jenna got called into her manager's office. It wasn't scheduled. It wasn't casual. It was the kind of meeting where HR sits in silently like a sniper waiting for a cue. She wore her usual blazer, too expensive for the title she barely kept, too low-cut for the woman she pretended to be. "Jenna," her boss began, not even bothering to close the blinds, "we received an anonymous concern from someone identifying themselves as your spouse." That was me. Except there was nothing anonymous about it. I attached my full name, the marriage certificate, the email exchanges, the retreat itinerary, and, most damningly, a security photo of her in a hot tub at the company's Tahoe Lodge with Gary, champagne glass in one hand, his hand nowhere appropriate. I wasn't petty. I was exact. "Now, Jenna," the HR rep said, feigning warmth like a funeral director, "this isn't a witch hunt. But optics matter. And there are questions." She tried to deny it at first. Said it was playful, team building, blown out of proportion. Then came the forwarded messages. Screenshots of Slack DMs sent during business hours. "He's in the conference room. Let's sneak upstairs after lunch. Bring wine. I'll pretend it's a meeting." They didn't just sink her credibility. They drowned it. By the end of the week, Jenna was restructured out of her position. No exit package. No glowing reference. Just an NDA and a cardboard box with a half-dead office plant and a stack of printouts she didn't want to read. The same conference room where she used to flirt through Zoom calls was now where her career flatlined. When she got back to the apartment, the one in her name, but my dime, there was a letter taped to the inside of the front door. Notice of lease termination. Effective 10 days. Non-renewable. Owner initiated. That was me too. I had arranged it before I left, knowing she wouldn't bother to check the fine print of the rental agreement I'd put under my LLC. Because why would she? I was boring Alan, the man who designed furniture for fun and remembered to change the air filters. Of course I'd take care of rent. But not anymore. She called the leasing office. They confirmed the termination. She asked why. Owner didn't provide a reason. Just requested vacancy within contract limits. Legally sound. And it was. The next day, her health insurance was declined during a prescription refill. She called the provider. "I'm sorry," the rep said. "Your plan was employer-sponsored. It's no longer active." She hadn't realized I removed her as a dependent the same hour the divorce was filed. No coverage. No COBRA. No umbrella to cling to while the sky broke open. No alimony either. Because Clause 14C of our prenup was written in unforgiving ink. Any confirmed act of marital infidelity voids financial entitlements. She tried texting me again. I made mistakes. I never expected you to go this far. Can't we talk? You're being cruel. But I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, but because her definition of cruelty was simply consequences. And for the first time in our entire marriage, they had finally arrived, sober, silent, and exactly on time. The next phase was predictable, textbook, even. When the shock wore off and the doors kept closing, Jenna did what people like her always do. Rewrote the script. Suddenly, she was the victim. The wronged. The misunderstood. Not a woman who detonated her marriage with a smirk, but a woman whose husband abandoned her without a word. Her first act was digital. She reactivated her Facebook profile, something she hadn't touched in years because Instagram had more filters and fewer middle-aged truths. She posted a black and white photo of a cracked teacup on a windowsill. The caption: "Some people say they love you, then disappear when you're broken the most." There were immediate likes from high school friends and yoga classmates. The kind of people who don't ask for context, just slap hearts and whisper, "You're so strong," into the void. Then came another post. 18 years erased. For one mistake. You think you know someone. The comments rolled in. What happened? Text me, babe. I'm here. He doesn't deserve you if he gave up that fast. She never mentioned my name. Never tagged me. But she didn't have to. She weaponized ambiguity like a pro. Meanwhile, the people who mattered, the ones who knew, stayed silent. Gary hadn't posted in days. Dana, his wife, changed her profile photo to a blank gray silhouette. My mutual friends with Jenna? Unfriended. Quietly. Without announcement. Like she'd become radioactive and they were stepping back before the fallout touched them. Then came the email. Subject line: please. I opened it only because I wanted it documented. Alan. I've been trying to make sense of everything. You shut me out so fast. I wasn't thinking clearly. You were always so distant, and Gary was just there. I didn't want to hurt you. It didn't mean anything. It just happened. Please don't throw everything away over one stupid, lonely mistake. You know me. You know I'm not this person. We can fix this. You used to say I was your home. I'm lost now. Please, come home. No apology. No admission. Just justification, blame shifting, and a desperate appeal to the version of me she thought might still be waiting somewhere, docile and hurt enough to crawl back. I read it once. Then again. Then I opened a new message to my legal team. Attached the email. One line in the body. Emotional manipulation, archive it. That's all. I didn't rage. I didn't reply. I didn't send it back with red lines and timestamps and bullet points about how homes don't cheat with your best friend and lie about book club. I simply had it filed, like any other piece of evidence. Because that's all her words were now. Exhibit material. She kept posting. More quotes. More healing journey nonsense. One day it was, sometimes strong women break too, followed by closure is something you give yourself. But no one from my side commented. No one called her brave. No one fed the performance. Silence, once again, did all the heavy lifting. And Jenna, once so loud in her righteousness, was left screaming into the digital abyss, hoping for echoes that would never come. The cabin hadn't changed, but everything inside it had. The air was still crisp, pine-scented. The woodpile stacked precisely how I left it. Marty had kept his promise. Gutters clean, pantry stocked, not a scratch on the truck. But there was a new rug in the living room now. A softer one. A woman's touch. Funny how something so small can reframe a space. Can turn a hiding place into a home again. It had been 34 days since I last stood on that porch. 34 days since I handed my past to a lawyer and stepped off the grid. In that time, I'd learned something surprising. Peace isn't quiet, it's absence. Absence of performance, of manipulation, of walking on eggshells that were mine to begin with. Now, the sun was setting. There were 2 glasses on the table. One for me. One for someone who'd never heard of Jenna, but listened like she'd been there through every storm. She was a school librarian from Georgia, wore flannel, and laughed with her whole mouth. We met by accident. Stayed in touch by choice. I was opening a bottle of wine when the knock came. Not urgent. Not hesitant. Just a sound. I didn't react. Just walked slowly to the door and opened it. Jenna, or what was left of her. Her makeup was minimal. Her clothes hung off her like they hadn't fit in weeks. Her eyes, those sharp, calculating things, were now dim, wet, searching for something that no longer lived behind my face. She didn't speak right away, just stared past me. And then she saw it. The second glass. I didn't flinch, didn't move to hide it, didn't offer a lie to soften the blow. That glass wasn't a symbol. It was a verdict. Her lips trembled. "Alan, I just wanted to talk." She said it with the same voice she used the night she told me. "Relax." It meant nothing. But now, everything did mean something. From inside the cabin, the voice came, soft, kind, unbothered. "Alan, want me to pour it?" Jenna froze. Then a woman stepped into the doorway's glow. Barefoot, calm, smiling, not young, not flashy, not some revenge fantasy in lipstick. Just real. She looked at Jenna with the polite indifference you reserve for a distant cousin at a funeral you didn't want to attend. Then she stepped back into the cabin like she'd seen a raccoon and decided it wasn't worth chasing. Jenna blinked. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. I watched her, not with anger, not even with triumph. Just distance. The same kind she once accused me of. And then I did the most honest thing I'd done in 18 years. I closed the door. Not hard, not loud, just closed it. And on the other side, I poured the second glass.